Good afternoon, everybody. We are so glad that you could join us for another episode of the Soul Care Sessions. Today, we are here with Tamiko Clark of Basic on Purpose. And I am your host, Chris Simmons, founder and chief creator of Lamb and Honey. This platform was basically created as a safe space for us to be able to come together, for us to be able to, advocate for ourselves, slow down, recharge, to form a connection, build some community, and basically form a reconnection with God during, every season of your life. Especially those times that we can have those slide down the wall moments, or moments when we just need an opportunity to just have a girlfriend just talk back to us so we don't lose our minds while we're out here. So, with that being the case, I wanted to take a moment to introduce you again to Tamiko. And Tamiko, I would like you to take a moment to tell us. Well, I like to start off every broadcast with the conversation that says, what does self care mean to you? What do you do? What does self care mean to you? And why is it important?
Sure, absolutely. So I am in the season of life of motherhood. And so I've got two little ones, a 7-year old and a 3-year-old. And so self care right now for me is doing washing my face and getting moisturizer on my face and toning and just getting to be able to do my full skincare routine. It's taking a shower that's longer than 5 minutes long and just having the hot water. Like, just my best ideas come to me for some reason when that hot water hits my back. Self-care for me looks like just, sitting down in my bed and with whether it's a book where I can get to read a couple of pages and just having, as an introvert, just having a little bit of alone time to myself. And it also can look like me organizing a corner of my home because I'm just one of those, people that geeks out over organization. And self care is just one of those things that we sometimes kind of put on this pedestal of a luxury, but it really doesn't have to be. And I feel like self care is a requirement for functioning in our life and navigating through life feeling like ourselves.
For sure. Like I would say that, even in it's good for those moments, like, because we live in a world of busyness. Society attempt to tell us that we always have to keep going and going and going, but we'll continue to go and go and go until we realize we're operating on fumes.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about how do we get to that point where we know that, how do we get to the point of not operating on fumes? Like, how do you take those intentional moments to say, okay, I'm done. I've had enough. So before I get to burnout mode and frustrated and go sit with your dad because you're killing me right now because I need a moment. So how do you recognize those moments?
So, one thing that I find that is the most important is just being self aware and just knowing what it looks like when you are at your best. And so when you know what that looks like, it becomes a little bit easier to recognize when you're out of alignment with who you are as a person. And so for me, I'm usually pretty light and calm. And so when I find myself just kind of like, just I'll even feel it in my body where I just find myself a little bit tensed up, or I find that I'm getting a little bit snappy at people that I normally wouldn't really be short with. Or if I find myself that I'm repeatedly getting frustrated with things where it's like, oh, I'm having a bad day, everything keeps, coming wrong. And then sometimes I have to take a step back and say, okay, wait a minute. Am I having a series of bad luck? Or is this how I'm receiving these things? And so just having that awareness is the very first thing for me, because if you don't know, if you don't know, then you can't solve the problem. And so just recognizing that and, kind of like you said, just taking that step back in whatever small way that is. I have a little spritzer, I think it's called mood mist. And so sometimes just as simple as just spraying that and just, smelling the scent that just, kind of makes me take pause and just kind of calm down. And something that I actually do with my 3-year old is I have her count But I found that when I'm counting with her, I actually calm down a little bit too. And so, I usually kind of laugh when people are like, okay, well, just count to 10. And, be okay, like, okay, counting 10 is not going to help me, and so I just kind of blow it off. But then when I actually am doing it and teaching it to my daughter, I realize that, what, there is a lot of validity in taking that moment to just sit there and just count. And that's just something that really helps me, get back to, where I'm at, recognizing that that's not me and that I need to make some sort of shift. And, sometimes it's writing it out, because a lot of times how I get to that tense moment is because, like you're saying, we get so caught up in the busyness.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's because there's so much swimming around in my head that's making me feel weighed down. And so just the simple act of me writing down what are all of the things that I'm trying to get to in my head, writing those down and seeing them on paper, just that exercise alone makes me feel like a weight is lifted, because I'm able to see with my eyes, okay, this is what's going on. And I can see, whoa, Tamiko, you were trying to do the most, trying to, figure out how to do all of these things, because I can see how long that list is. And then I can break it up. And so there's so many different ways to go with this. And it's just really, it starts with figuring out, when you're out of alignment, and then figuring out why, like what's causing that. And then that kind of directs you on what you need to do. And so, and also another thing that helps me too, like in along the lines of the mood mist, is just putting on a favorite song. And that gets me kind of hyped up. That helps me kind of shift my mindset.
That's good stuff. So, in that, because that sounds like you found in those spaces of you being able to be self aware, to recognize the shift, to play your favorite song. So, how is it that you're able to? So, oh goodness. So, those are the things that helps you find the balance between being in your mommyhood, running your business. So tell me a little bit about your business.
Sure. So I am a former junk food junkie and corporate dropout turned certified holistic nutritionist, health coach, wellness strategist. And I love helping busy women make the time today to put into their personal nutrition and their personal wellness, because, like we keep talking about, just we get so caught up in the busyness that the very first thing to get on the back burner is our personal nutrition and our personal wellness, because it just seems like small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, but it is the biggest of potatoes. And that if you're not taking care of your personal nutrition, if you're not taking care of your personal wellness, then, you're all of those things are just interconnected, and you're not going to perform at your best self, and you're going to find yourself burning out quicker, because you're running on fumes. And so that means you have to work harder to make it work. Whereas if your personal nutrition is on point and your wellness is on point, then your body and your mental space and your spirit is going to be running at its most efficient, so that it's not as challenging. You're not running up against a wall, burning out the little bit of energy that you have. And so I love helping women find the place in their life as it is today to make it work today. And I especially love helping first time moms with toddlers, because that's when you're really, really in the thick of it, coming out of that first year of motherhood, like, whoa, what was that? And then realizing, the ramifications of this beautiful time of your life, but then, whoa, I haven't been paying attention to taking care of me. So how do I make this work in my new role?
So in those moments when you feel like you're like, whoa, I haven't taken care of me, how does that make you feel? Like, do you find yourself feeling like in places of like overwhelming or failure? Like, and if you find yourself feeling in those spaces, um, are you able to talk yourself out of them quicker than you used to? Or, because it's practice, right? It's practice. You don't always catch it from initially from when it begins to happen.
Absolutely not. And when I think back to my very first year of motherhood, I felt so alone and I felt so isolated. And I felt like I was trying to, at the time, that was when I was working in corporate. I just felt like I was, working so hard, in my career and working so hard to be the best mom that I could be and trying to be a good wife and trying to take care of my household and, laundry that needs to be folded and just trying to, just be the best in all of these different roles. And I just, I lost sight of my sense of self and who I was. And it was making me, I don't know, a little bit resentful and feel a little bit of anger because, and I didn't know it at that time. I didn't know it was because I wasn't, nothing in my life that I was doing at that time was for me. And all I had was that feeling of like, oh, like I feel agitated, I feel angry, I feel resentment, but I didn't know where it was coming from until I just got to a point where I just felt so overwhelmed with, trying to be the best in all these different areas of my life that I first had a moment where I'm like, okay, I can't, this isn't sustainable. I can't keep up with this. And I just started with, okay, when I'm at work, I need to focus on just work. I can't be thinking about like, okay, what am I going to cook for dinner? What is, what time am I going to like, I can't be thinking about like other stuff other than work things. I can't be taking, personal like phone calls or anything like that. I need to just focus on work. And when I'm at home, I need to not be thinking about what meetings and all of that stuff. I need to compartmentalize these different parts of my life. And then as I started doing just that little thing, that's when I started realizing like, okay, well, what part's for me? And I think I was looking at just some old pictures from my fun days, my extra fun days where that was, the big majority of my life. And I was like, whoa, I would, go to the mall and just, look at clothes and sometimes buy them. And, I would go to lunch with, my girlfriends and, I would go get pedicures like once a month. And I would go, I read books for, for pleasure. I used to do that. And I don't know. And so I just realized that I wasn't doing anything for me. And, when you're not doing anything for you, that can make you, feel a little bit resentful for all of like the roles that you're playing, even though they're beautiful things that you enjoy and that you love. If you're not part of that equation, it starts to eat away at you.
Did you feel like you didn't have help or support at any given time? And how did you figure out your way? How did you figure out your healing process? Was like there some prayer involved? Or what were you reading? Like what were you feeding yourself to get back to you?
Yeah, I think just kind of getting to a point of there was one, and actually one of the biggest times was I and so and not to be a Debbie Downer, but so in my second pregnancy, I got halfway through that pregnancy and had some medical complications that put me in the hospital. And then that led to further medical complications with my pregnancy that required an emergency C-section. And then to just put it plainly so that I don't, go there, I
It's okay if you
gave
do. It's okay.
I ended up giving birth to my daughter a lot earlier than I expected. And she was at a point where gestationally it wasn't ideal, but it was
Mhm.
an age like where she could have survived. But I had ended up getting an infection while I was in the hospital and she didn't make it. And so she only lived for a day. And I came back from so that was the hardest thing I ever gone through in my entire life. And I came back to my corporate job to return to a very toxic environment. And where, my husband's work, they started like a meal train and they were sending us all of like, these meals every night. And, I had a lot of really like heart to heart moments with other people that, were strangers to me because these were my husband's coworkers. And then I returned to my office, and I had been there for 10 years. And I had never felt so alone in my life. And I am a retired people pleaser. And I've always been like,
Good
that
for you.
independent person. And, like, I got this, I got this, I got this. And so just when I didn't have this, I didn't really have, not, it's my job. So like, I didn't, it's not their responsibility to like take care of me, but it's just the humanity wasn't there.
Sure.
And so it was just a really crazy time. And then it was right before the holidays. And then once the holidays hit, it started feeling a little bit better. And then when we got back from the holidays, I thought I was going to a meeting with my new boss because there was changes in the environment. And the HR person who is not normally in our office was there, and me and all of the other managers were getting laid off. And so I was just in a place of just feeling so crushed, and like where I didn't even, and actually in the meeting, I didn't even realize, what was happening because I had never been in a situation like that. And I saw, the HR person, I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in so long. What are you doing here? And then my new boss had walked in. He's like, oh, hey, Tamiko. I asked her to join us. And unfortunately, this wasn't going to be a happy meeting. And so I just sunk. And, I was just shy of like my 10-year anniversary working there. And I had given like that company my blood, sweat, and tears. And then I was dropped like a dime, on a dime. And just that was so really like hitting like that rock bottom. And also like that year, like I'd lost my daughter. I lost both of my cats. My late father's brother passed away that year. And it was just a really bad year, to say the least. And that was like the moment for me, and where it's like, they say that like hard times is when you recognize like who your true like friends are and who your true people are. And that was, even though I was, and I had to stay there for like a month, which was torture. And so I took that as, a sign that, Tamiko, like, you can't just pour into, things and other stuff like around you, like, and not have there be something like for you, and not make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And so before all that, like I had worked on like my personal like nutrition and stuff like that. Um, but then the one thing that I was missing was taking care of my personal wellness and taking care of like, of my soul and like who I was like as like a person. And that I was so focused on just pouring into everybody else that I wasn't pouring into me. And so it took them to pay me to leave to finally get that message. And so I
Mm-hmm.
spent a year off, like just loving on my family and just reflecting and just, just pouring into like who I was and just taking time for me. And because I wasn't giving myself permission to take care of me. And so now I was getting like kicked out and paid to like, have a little sit and figure out who I was. And, I did a lot of just journaling and talking to other people. And what I realized just talking to other people is like how much like other people like have like stories like mine, but we just don't talk about it with each other. And I talked to so many other people that had gone through like such hard times, and I'd known these people for years and had no idea that they had ever gone through like whatever thing that they had gone through. And there was just something just very comforting, and knowing that I wasn't alone in my struggle, and then just to be able to see that, like, okay, this is what it looks like when people don't have your back, and this is what it looks like and what it feels like when people do. And that was that moment for me. Was like, one of the most pivotal times like of my life, and where I felt called to like help other people, like make those things easy and make it a priority, because we have to take care of ourselves. Because otherwise, if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not enjoying life, what's the point?
Yeah, I say that all the time. So, one, I'm so sorry.
So, thank you.
I un- I understand.
Thank
I
you.
understand more than you know, which is part of the reason why we started what we started Lamb and Honey, and then to come into the soul care sessions, because we wanted to be able to share stories of triumph, and we wanted to see the outcomes of victory. We wanted to be able to witness those things, because especially in our community, we don't share. We'll keep
Nope.
band-aids. We'll keep band-aids on those scars, and they'll never heal. And I wanted us to be able to sit in a space where we can literally, let me say this, I want us to sit in a safe space where we can share, where you can be your vulnerable self without judgment. So, and that's the most important things, because it's not your fault that the things happened that they did. It's not it's not my fault, that for my fertility issues. It's no one's fault. That's just our God-given path, and it's our path that we walk so we can help somebody else get free, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and I absolutely appreciate you sharing your vulnerability and your story of your family, of your heartbreak, because it's a hard thing to share. So I thank you, really, I do. Um,
No problem.
but also congratulations for the overcome.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and and it's just really cool, like just coming full. And so that was, something that was, 5 or so years ago. And and so I don't really go there very often in, these days and stuff, but just even, talking about it right now. And like, I do remember like during that time of like kind of going through it, like before like the layoff, and just, talking to people. And like, I had this feeling that like I had to be strong, like I had to be strong, like I couldn't show weakness. And just, and I think, that's a big part of like just our culture. And like, and just where it's like I have to be, this strong Black woman, and I need to like, I don't have weakness, and I don't have, like, I'm not supposed to be vulnerable, like I take care of my own, like I have to be this person and play this role. But then no, we're humans. We're
That's a
humans
lot.
and we have feelings. And that's a lot to hold on your shoulders. And you don't have to, because, yeah. And even though like people are talking about it, we should talk about these things more. And I love that you have this safe space for that, because we have to break that cycle of just feeling like we have like to be, you know, this super powered person that can ward off all like the bad things. And so, but it definitely feels so amazing to just come to like this full circle place of like me like coming from like a junk food background, and like having like this like low of the low of like my wellness, and like just to come like full circle and like have like a place where I have like, not only am I healthier like physically, I've also got two beautiful and healthy kids that like love eating healthy, and who are in touch with like their feelings. And when they're feeling like sad about something, they're going to express that to me in words. And it's so important that like, we get to a place like where we know that it's okay to take care of ourselves and that it's not selfish.
It absolutely is not. It absolutely is not. I
Yes.
will also say, so tell me because I know sometimes when we're, um, you know, when we if we take vacation, right? Or we have those moments and we call those moments of self-care, but we'll indulge, right? We'll eat all of the things that we shouldn't eat. We'll drink all of the things. And I myself am an advocate for eating well, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, just the most unhealthiest, or you can eat well and eat good at the same time. And I think we have this mindset that puts us in a position to realize that, well, if I'm not eating mashed potatoes and gravy and smothered fried chicken and Hawaiian rolls, I'm not eating well. But that's not true. So walk us through that self-care moment of food, because we'll tend to think it's healing from an emotional place, where it's supposed to be healing from a holistic, healthy, spiritual place.
Absolutely. And yes, and so I definitely grew up eating like all of the just very filling foods, and make sure you eat stuff that's going to stick to your ribs, and and just like something you can sink your teeth into, and so what I love is like being able to take, that healthy eating healthy does not mean bland, flavorless, gross food.
You
Like
better
it does
tell us.
not mean any of that. And so you can really take, and you don't have to like come right out the gate. If you're not currently eating healthy, you don't have to come right out the gate eating salads and smoothies every day. Like it doesn't have to look like that. And so something as simple as my grandmother, she makes these like smothered burritos, and like they are divine and they are delicious and I love them. Every time I go visit her, I absolutely ask her to make those for me, and I love them. And so I do enjoy, eating those when I do go visit her. And I don't feel any guilt about it because they're delicious. And so, but I'm not eating those smothered burritos every single day.
Mhm.
And I have kind of dabbled in changing out some of those ingredients, like where it's like a lean turkey or a pork tenderloin, like over like a steak, just switching out like some of those ingredients to just get you started so that you're starting with foods that you do love, but swapping them for alternatives. For example, instead of sour cream, using like a Greek yogurt or like a coconut based yogurt where it doesn't really the plain kind, so you don't really taste the any other flavors, but just something as simple as that. I personally don't notice a difference when I use yogurt instead of sour cream, and just those types of like little swaps. And the other thing too, with both of my kids, I did something called baby led weaning.
Okay.
And that's where, when you first introduce them to eating food, you're not just giving them jars of baby food. You're having them eat the way that you eat, but in a baby prepared way. And so, like,
Correct.
cutting
Okay.
things up really small. And so, with my son, especially, because it was a little bit easier when I just had one. And so, with my son, especially, I made sure that all of the foods that, like, I gave him were packed with flavor, and that I was like making his meals and they had like roasted garlic, and I was using spices, and I was using fresh herbs, and making sure that he was used to eating things that had flavor, because that's one of the easiest ways to take the stereotypical healthy foods and make them taste good. Is there's nothing wrong, like you shouldn't be dousing things with like all kinds of salt,
Yeah.
but spices, herbs, fresh garlic, ginger, like whatever, like use like those things to flavor your foods, and you can eat healthy food. Like, broccoli. I like broccoli. Both my kids love broccoli. But you don't have to just eat plain steamed broccoli. Like you can add, some garlic and lemon and a little bit of Parmesan. No, don't overdo it, but just put some flavor on it. And there's absolutely no reason that, like you said, that You have to eat healthy food that tastes bad, because if you're eating healthy food that tastes bad, that's a personal choice. And so, you can, eat healthy and be like restricted and regimented, or you can enjoy the healthy food. Because, and I think one of the biggest things, or last thing that I'll say about this, is if you're looking at eating healthy as a long game, that will help you kind of shift your perspective on how you're preparing your healthy food or what you're seeking out. Because if you're looking at it as a short game of like, okay, I got to lose 10 pounds, or I got to, like, get my A1C down, or my blood pressure, or whatever. If you're looking at it as like a short game, then you're not going to really go all in and making that food taste good. And so you're just kind of like, okay, I just got to eat this for a little bit, and then I'm going to ditch it as soon as I, reach my goal. Even if you're not saying that out loud to yourself, that's what your subconscious is telling you. So if you make that shift to, I want to eat healthy for the rest of my life, then once you've made that decision for yourself, and that I want to eat healthy, not I should be eating healthy. So I want to, as opposed to I should. And then I want to do this for the rest of my life. So if you're looking at this as something that you're doing for the rest of your life, you have a choice. Are you going to make this a life sentence, or are you going to make this a lifestyle? And so if you choose lifestyle, then you're going to kind of open up your brain for making it work in a sustainable way that's going to last for the rest of your life.
That's good. So it's important to make lifestyle changes based upon conscious decisions. That's what I heard you say.
Yes, absolutely.
So that is, look, we could end right now. I'm done. Like, that was good to know. That was good to know. So once you're in this space, so give me a day in the life of like what you would do. Like if I wanted to be a client and I came to you and I said my life is a train wreck. I eat bad. I am I'm emotional and I eat everything I want. I like peach rings. I want ice cream. I want Talente. I want Bluebell. I want all the things, but I eat broccoli too. Like, tell me what you would tell me. What does that consult look like? What does that tell me? If someone was interested in coming to see it, to see you, what would you tell them?
So, what I would say is that, or what I tell everyone, is that when it comes to eating healthy on a regular basis, and when you're battling with all of these different cravings, and really these eating habits that you've grown accustomed to and that have become very integrated into your life, it's time to integrate new habits that you really want. And they have to be things that feel aligned with you and your lifestyle and your preferences, and not what I'm going to dictate to you on how you should eat. So it really breaks down to three different spaces. And so that's, I say, get your mind right, get the vibe right, and get into gear. And so get your mind right. That is a focus on, where we sit down and we would look at what are the different, what's your goal, what's your objective goal that you're trying to reach for, because that's usually the thing that kind of gets you on the phone with me, is that there's a specific goal that you're trying to achieve, whether that's to lose weight or lower some sort of health number, or you're feeling brain fog, or your energy is really low, or you just don't feel right, and you know that it has to do with your lifestyle. And so identifying what like that objective goal is. And then we would really look at like, okay, what is your struggle? What is the thing that when you try to eat healthy, what's the brick wall that you run into? And so identifying what that is. And then once we know what that brick wall is, then we can figure out how do we break that brick wall down, or what are the things that we can do to get around or over that brick wall. And so it just really depends on like what that is for you as an individual. And so that's what the get your mind right. And some of those things might be things from, your upbringing, and, the mindsets that, or the beliefs and thoughts that you were, subconsciously taught as a kid, because that's where a lot of our eating habits are formed, or during early childhood. And so
Mm.
like figuring out what, what that is, like what is the thought and belief that you've been carrying with you, what that is, and then how do we flip that around to make it work for you. And so then, did you want to say something?
No, good. No.
Okay. And so the next part, get the vibe right. And so that's a two-parter. So that's the vibe as in your physical environment. Do you have is your kitchen and is your home set up for at your fingertips nutrition? Are the cheese puffs, hiding the roasted nuts, that you could be reaching for instead of, like making sure like, and for me, like, I like to have things like pretty and lined up because then it's like, ooh, that's aesthetically pleasing. I'm going to grab for that thing. Or is it your refrigerator, the foods in your refrigerator, are those easy and accessible? Pre-rinsing, if you like strawberries, pre-rinsing those and cutting the green stems off so that it's easy for you to like, ooh, I'm hungry. Let me open up the refrigerator. These strawberries are already pre-rinsed. I can just pop a few of those in my mouth as opposed to like, ooh, those strawberries look good, but oh, I don't want to go rinse them off and dry them off and cut off the green stems. That's too much work. And so at your fingertips nutrition. And then the other part of get the vibe right is, what we've been talking about. What little self-care things are you doing in your day to day? What does personal self-care look like for you, and like do you have that set up to like get that like at least like once a week something for you. And then finally we get into the nitty gritty of your strategy, and so getting into gear. And so this isn't just about, okay, here is a meal plan, now run along, here you go, because that is, meal plans are helpful and they're great and they're an excellent tool. But if that's all you have, then you're, unless you're super duper disciplined already, which if you are, you're probably not going to be coming to me. And so with a meal plan, it's not enough. You need a meal strategy that
Mm.
is a culmination of meal plans and different tactics that are set up for your life today. What are the different obstacles that you run into where it's like, oh, well, I'm always, doing, drop offs, or I've always am running to the next appointment. And, what are the things that you're running into on the day to day that stop you from eating healthy? And so figuring out what those points are and then creating strategies for each of those and tactics for each of those things, so that when you do run into those repeat obstacles, you already have something in your tool belt to pull from. So yeah, that's what I help with.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I think I have one more question for you, which is a really simple one that says, what is one thing you would leave with the viewers to tell them that, what is the one thing, what is your final thoughts? That's the question. Yeah.
My biggest thing is just that, and we've already said it, is that self-care is not selfish. Self-care is not a luxury. Self-care is a requirement for life. And that it's okay to take care of yourself, and you, yes, just take care of yourself, and your personal nutrition and your wellness are the most powerful tool that you have to just a happy life and a successful life.
All right. Well, Tamiko, I thank you for being a part of us today. And I want you to tell the people, so I can pop it up on the screen, how they can follow you. How is it that they can find more about you and to connect with you?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy sitting here and chatting with you. And to find me, I'm not on social media a ton, but Instagram is the best place to DM me and get in contact with me. And so you can find me at Basic on Purpose on Instagram. So
All right. So I'm going to put that scrolling across the screen so they can see it.
perfect.
So, and then we will have that. So, Tamiko, I thank you for being with us today. And I can't wait. I will they'll actually be broadcasted live, but I'll let you know when it will air, so you can let everybody know so they can come back and watch. But I am so excited for this, and I thank you again. And you have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And remember that this episode is sponsored by Lamb and Honey, where we illuminate the outer you while loving and elevate the inner you. Thank you, everybody, and be blessed.